In this video help, I'm going to start by talking a little bit about the consignment item and one thing I corrected. In the consignment screen, what happened, there was another field here that became redundant. The recon fee down in this place, and the recon fee again is where the consignor's item that he put in for sale, if there was a problem with it, and I mentioned it, say like there was a rip in the dress and it was corrected by professional sewing and it cost $2 in a recon fee for that to be sewn. And it could be a piece of furniture, for example, that had a scratch that you repaired and you had some professional go ahead and remove the scratch. You would put in the cost of that effort down here in this area, and that would be in this case $2. And what it'll do is it'll automatically discount this up here for the consignor fee by the amount you put in this field. So let's just go ahead and take it out and see what it actually puts back in there. It becomes $9.75. And this is a 50-50 type of a situation. What I would do now, because I put that in there, I would take that $9.75, copy it, and then overwrite the commission fee here and put in $9.75, so it's a 50-50 split. And that's the way it should be updated. And the recon fee, again, is something that is related to services that the consignor should be paying for. Okay, let's go ahead and move on. We had the consignor contract. We looked at that, and I mentioned some things. I'll just kind of update it a little bit. These are in here in multiple pages, so you can put as many pages as you want in there, and I mentioned that. It would be a good idea to go ahead and add your text in this field, and if you want to see it in a larger form, we just see it in the contract page. If you want to return to the contract data, you can go back here. Now what was happening before, this was actually going to the wrong location. It was going to the consignor page instead of the consignor contract page. So we corrected that. Now we talked about the map that uses the mailing address, city, state, and all that kind of stuff. And this is a recap of the items. The event screen, where you, like if you have an estate sale and you're going to have this all done at a estate sale and you created as consignor to do that, this would be the information for the consignment sale. One of the things I want to add is that the event down here can include the people. In this case, the signed employees would be in there for whoever is going to be at the event. And it might be a 1, 2, 3 day thing. So you'd want to put who was going to be there on what days, and that organizes it so that the people themselves know when the start time is, when the finish time is, what the kind of a sale is this, and you can edit this by changing what is in here. If you had something like a moving sale you wanted to add in there, you could do that. Okay, let's go on to the next item. The consignor UDF I explained in the other one, but I just want to recap so we're all on the same page. This is the individual items that are being sold, and the item information for UDF is something that was not included in any of the text on the screen or on the other page. You can actually create your own date where you actually had something happen. The UDF title is the title of whatever this is going to be, and the UDF data is the actual thing that you want to address as far as this is concerned. UDF fields are user defined fields, and that's for any item that is not present on the actual screen, so that when you actually add another UDF field, user defined field, it replaces something that is not on the screen and you can add it into the database, and that way you have things in there. For example, if there was a special thing you had to do for a client and you promised them, you could put in a UDF field for the date and what you're going to do as far as the title, like or whatever, and then the data actually what you're going to do. Now if you put more text in here that can actually fit for the visual, you can click on the field, and what it'll do is it open and expands to show the rest of the information that is in the text. The next thing we're going to be looking at is the consignor store. Now we just covered this, but I want to recap because there's a lot of things going on. And this is the actual item that is sold, and it says up here this is store credit and auto-filled by the summary fields and calculated by the store credit balance. So these are the items that are individually sold and with the actual value. Like we just changed this to $9.75 for that item. It is now updated because we modified it in the listing screen. Okay, now these two fields down here, this one takes you to the buyer's listing, which is where you would create a new buyer and the information that would look very similar to this. And we're going to be covering that when we get to the buyer screen portion. Then this is for the add invoice, where you go to the invoice, create a new invoice for this record by the ID. And when you go to these places and you move to those records to add something, they should carry the consignor ID to that page, which would allow you to be able to track what consignor this belonged to. Okay, let's, in the case of the add invoice, the invoice you'll be adding will have a drop down for the buyer, and the invoice number is the important thing on that page. Not so much the consignment ID, but it is included on that screen so you know what the buyer bought from and who the consignor was. Okay, what I'm going to want to cover just a little bit more. We said in this as a recap that this is the consignor information, and I want to give some kind of an idea for you. First thing you do is make sure that you have your consignor all filled in. The next thing you do, and that's why this is highlighted in a different color, you're going to go to this page and create all the information for the consigned item. If you're going to do multiple items, you just scroll down and add another item as long as you need to. If you have a number of items in here and you want to go right to the last one, you can click the last one. It'll go to the last record, and in this case it'll be the next one to be filled in, and this is blanked. So what you would do is just start in by adding anything. Now what you would do is start in the description, and as soon as you create the description, it'll automatically add the ID and the item ID, and it'll create the consignment date. And a lot of the information, some of it will be popping down in here. For example, if I created it, the 30-day, if you put any date in here, like it's blank right now, if you put the percent of discount for the second, third, and fourth discount, which is after 30, 60, and 90 days, and then the percentage would be put in here. And you do it with a decimal. You just go ahead and put period, and then whatever it is, like 10%, 20%, 30%, whatever. And these are discounted off of the actual price over here. When you put in the date ranges, this will automatically fill in the next date. For example, this would be 30, 60, 90, and 104. Or if you're not going to use this at all, then you don't have to put anything in here at all. This would be just in case you have incremental discounts in your by the date that is indicated in here. If you don't want to put this in, just leave it all blank in here on a new record. Now this is individual records, so whatever the item is that you're creating in this record would be, all the things you're putting in here would be assigned as entered for that particular item. So for example, say if I change the percent for the commission for the store, I would start in by putting it in this field for the commission for the consignor, and say like he's going to get 40% and this is going to be 60. You just go ahead and put the dot period 40 and it would go in there, and it would change that percent for just this item. Okay, on an iPad, and these are things I didn't mention, on an iPad when you tap on the field, it's going to look into the photo part of your iPad to see if you have photos for those. So in this case, on the iPad, phone and iPad, by looking into the photo library, you need to have the picture taken. Now with an iPad, obviously, or iPhone, you can take a photo, and then when you go over to the from here to the photo library, you can go ahead and add it to this space. You can also, if this is on the desktop and you had a photo on the desktop, you can drag it to this field and it'll drop it into there. Okay, let's go ahead and do the next thing. We're going to be jumping over to the report. In this case, we're going to click out of here to hide that. We're going to go over here, and what we're going to do is go down to the consignment report. Now the reason I recapped in here and showed you some additional screens, it becomes more clear when I go into the report. Now in this particular case, if I'm going to do a report, one of the first things you should do, if the screen is not full and showing all the information, click on the Run Report. And what it'll do is it'll update the report and add this area up here to the screen. And in most cases, the subtotals in here will not be visible until you actually run the report. And the reason for that is if you've gone and you've edited something in the consignment area, you want to update it by running the report and making sure that everything in there is as you would expect it to be. Now, the consignment report is a consolidated report over the 3.5 Consignment Pro application. What I mean by that is we've taken a look at everything that was required in version 4 and it added additional information. Plus we redesigned some of the programming in the application to allow more the features to be functional in this area. What happens is the items totals and stuff for the buyer's credit, store credit, didn't function the same way as it does now. And here it's all automatic. Everything happens as you would expect it to, and all the information is provided in this screen to allow you to see virtually everything that you would need in this consignment report. This is for the consignor data, and it's by each item that is sold. For example, if you come into this screen, the consignor ID is the item that is sorted by. In other words, it'll come in if you're wanting to see all the report items, you would come in and the consignor ID would be in there, and then all the item IDs and the data for the item IDs would be below. And as soon as you get this break line, this line that's along here, the next thing that would be loaded in there would be the next item in this consignor's consigned items. So the information might be different between each individual item you see in this page. For example, the percentage of the consignment for the store and for the consignor is 50-50, but the next record, and of course this is another ID for another consignor, but in this case you see 40-60. If he'd had a second one up here and it was 40-60, then this is what it would look like with the 40-60. And it recalculates everything in both of them depending upon what the percentages are. In addition to doing that, what it does is it has the name of the individual or store. It has the consignment, the actual credit for the commission for the consignor. It has the what was paid for the consignor for this individual. You can see this because this says sold. If it was not sold, these would not be calculated. Then if you're going to actually pay or had paid the consignor on a particular day, you'd use the drop down and put the what they were done as far as paid. If you're not going to send a check or pay them in cash at the counter, then this would be, you could leave it done and say, for example, they're using store credit. If they're using store credit, the store credit is on the main consignor ID page. In other words, the screen that you opened up initially where you set the consignor, that particular screen has the consignor information for the balance for the store as far as their store credit. If you go down through this, you'll see that the date the item was consigned, the item ID number, the description of the item. And I mentioned before, you want to keep that so that when it goes on the invoice, that it's short and brief enough that it'll fit within this field. You have the category of the item, which is not actually on the invoice. The quantity is, and it's required. You need to have that on there. This allows you to come to this screen and do a find. Say you're looking for all the dresses or shoes or whatever it might be. You can actually just go ahead and do a find. And when you do the find, this drops down and allows you to pick the item you want to look for. It will not change the current item description in here. It can just be dress, for example, if you wanted to. But if you wanted to, say for example, we had 30 records for this guy and they're all different kinds of items. If you did the find and you're looking for a dress once you start the find, then it'll find all the dresses within that person's listing of items. Now, identify the kind of item, because it's important. A lot of people leave this blank and then they wonder why it's so difficult to find a specific item in the report. So you need to put the dress or whatever it is into the category line. Quantities required, so you can calculate the other items in the screen. Size is the same as the last thing we saw over there. You can put the size of a dress, a shirt, a shoe, or whatever, or some garment that is small, medium, large, extra large, or whatever. Now, obviously a dress would be a woman's item. So in some cases there are sizes for women, but you wouldn't intentionally put in something like extra large. Now it may be small because it might be, even petite might be in there. If you wanted to change these, click Edit, go down and put in petite or something like that. That would be more like some other ladies' garments. Items sold data is automatically entered on the report and on the other screens that support the items when the item is sold. The other thing is the store percent down here. This is the consignor, this is the store. If it's sold, the calculated store commission would be here, where the consignor is up here, and they're colored to match so you can kind of see the things that are obviously the same kind of items. The store commission is $9.75. If there were any shipping fees, the store should be taking those fees for shipping and holding those separate. They're not part of the commissions in either direction, but the shipping fees are accounted for down on the screen down here as far as items that are shipped as a total. Okay, so let's go back up here, and we're on the tax. We know the tax is calculated based on the percentage rate that you're using, that you put in for the individual items as you added it. The buyer's fee is the same kind of a situation. If you added a buyer's fee, it should be included automatically. The sell discount, if you did a sell discount on the invoice, it'll be reflected here and taken out of the sold at amount, which will affect the commission on both cases for the percentages, because when you calculate it, you're going to be taking out the discount because the item is going to be sold at a lesser price. Sold at fee over here, for example, is what would happen. If you put a discount in here, it's going to automatically take it out of the sold at price. And if this would be the buyer's fee included. If there was no buyer's fee, it wouldn't have the additional 50 cents in it that you see up here. In this case, the item could sell without a buyer's fee, and then if it was sold with a buyer's fee, then it would be selling at this amount. This will show up on the invoice as one field. And for example, if I had a buyer's fee, that would change this with to 50 cents more. But if I didn't put the buyer's fee in, it would take whatever is in the sold at price and it would put it in the sold at price plus buyer's fee. The date sold is important. That's added on the invoice by the person doing the invoice input. Obviously, the status we covered already. An item would be, if it wasn't sold, it'd be for sale. If it was sold store, then it would affect the commissions, because the commission should be 100% for the store. So this would be 100% down here, and this would be 0. Layaway is what it is. It'll be paid for on incremental payments. Holding, if somebody has something, you may want to put in a deposit for the amount of the item sold on the payment pop-up for the amount of the deposit, or for the layaway. And also the same thing for holding. You should take a deposit for holding items. And if you're, depending on how you run your business, if they come back and say they don't want it, you should probably have a holding fee that is adequate to give a deposit back to you, and that would be added into the cost of the item. As far as the item, if the holding fee was not calculated, it would be calculated in the payment, and you would take some money for that. That's really how you run your business if you want to take a deposit on a holding item or not. You obviously would on a layaway. It'd be a portion of the actual price for the entire item. Returned, a returned item is something obvious. When somebody has a problem with it and it's not the product you sold has a problem with it, they could return it, and that would be a policy that you would put in your contract. Donated, this is a situation where when you get to the 104th date, or between 90 and 104, and the person either tells you that they want to donate it or they want it returned. In this case, it'd be return the item, okay? And that affects several things, because if you returned it, it's just like it's not a sale. It would you would mark it as returned, and then when you put it back out on the floor after you've inspected it, you would put it back for sale again. Damaged, that's pretty straightforward. If it's damaged, this is a decision for the store to say either you're going to return it immediately to the consignor, or if you they donate it because it's damaged, then it would be a donated item. And then on donated items from a consignor, you would change the percentage for the store commission to 100% if you wanted to fix it and then sell it as a store sold item. That's quite a bit of stuff in one place. It's got a lot of stuff going on there. And plus, as I mentioned before, the sold at store and sold are actually different items. This is where it's at 100% of the store commission. This is what this one would be, whatever the split is between the consignor and the buyer. Okay, so the next one, the item sell price, is the initial value that you put in, like whatever it should sell for, that you've set up the default price for the item up until 30 days is completed. If you had the settings in the listing screen set to take off a percentage of this by every 30 days, then that would be what this thing should have, is its item sell price when it's done. Fees due consignor. This is where if you have fees that were, say, like for example, there was something that the item had some problems with it and you had to have it repaired, like we talked about the dress, this is where the fees due consignor would be changed. Okay, buyer's name. This is from the buyer's invoice, when the buyer is picked, this will change, and this is a drop down so you can search in it. If you had names in there, it would show you the names. And also it would show you the name when you pick it in the invoice initially at the top in the header. This would show who bought this item. If you ever had to go back and find out who actually bought it, you can go into the buyer's screen and go to the listing view, find that person by name, and then go back into their record. There's sometimes issues where if you have a problem with the actual payment, for example, something could be on layaway or hold. This is a way to look at the report and see who has the item. And if it's over here on hold or layaway, you would obviously know who the buyer was. As with the other part of the screens, if you click on this, you can replace the picture, insert a new picture, or on the iPad or iPhone, it would be insert from the library. Okay, in this case, if you don't have the headers, go ahead and click this, and what it'll do is it'll run and put the headers in. Okay, down here at the end of the items that are in the particular item thing here, there would be a summary at the bottom of the individual's items. And the summary would be, like you see here, all the items down here, okay? And I should have had that on here. I'm not sure exactly why it's not showing right now. I'll check that out. But there should be a subtotal down here. And that's for the item that you're running for with all the items that are shown on the screen. And that's why. Because what it does is it takes, in this particular report, it'll take whatever is on the screen and summarize it. And the reason that it does that, it allows you to take either an individual or a group of people or whatever, and then the sub-summary is down here for the items that are viewed here. If you did a find over here and you said start a search and you picked the item number 1 over here for the consignor, and then you went ahead and did the perform search, you'll see, and you have of course to go back over and say run this. This is the calculated for the number 1. The summary for the number 1 is in here. In this case, it's the item 3, not the consignor. In this case, it's the consignor. Item 1 and 3 is all they've ever consigned. So the summary would be here. And then the grand summary for all the records the current selection has in it. So, for example, if I had another, say this is a consignor item for number 2, the next guy in the consignment list, then the consignment would be up here. The screen would look like this. All the items for item consignor number 1 and the sub-summary, and then the grand summary for item consignor number 1 and the items that are currently in there. Now remember, consigning items are not sequential by the consignor ID. They're sequential in the database for every new item that is added. The next number in the series would be the next item. So this is 1. There was another, obviously 2 put on another consignor, and then this would be number 3 in this consignor, and that would be the next item that was added to that consignor's items. If you want to go to the actual record and hit this, it'll take you to that consignor item record, and you can see whether or not it had sequential discounts. In this case, this is what it looks like when you have the full price. The full price is in there. There's nothing in the data range, and there's nothing in the percent discount, so that this has no discounts automatically. And if you're on the invoice, you can do the same thing to go back to the consignor ID item and the item name in here or number, and then you can see anything that was in here. For example, you can see it was sold, and whatever the percentage split was, the actual sold at price would be here. This would be the sold price if it does not have a buyer's fee included in it. Okay, so we've covered a lot here, and the main thing I wanted to cover with this video is the difference between the items that we were looking at over here and how they affect the screens, and you can navigate to those individual fields between this bar and down to here, and the listing item included, and the small labels are also. And I explained before, if you're going to do a group, you can either do it by, as far as grouping the items by the labels, you would do a search on the individual portal record, not in this screen. You go to the individual portal record, and I'll have to make sure why that. Oh, I know why, because there's no data in it. It has to have data. It's on number 3. So if I go back and I go to the consignor data, I go to the first record. Now when I do that and say portal, it's going to take me to that particular record. So now I'm over in that record. You have to be aware that when you don't have anything in the portal record on the main screen and there's no data in it, it can't go to a related record because there is no data record until you have actual data in the consignor data screen, you can't have a record here. And the reason they're actually added in the consignor data screen is that you create the record on this screen within these items. You don't go directly to the portal and start adding records in there. That is verboten. You don't do that. You create the records in here on the pop-up record. Then you can go to the portal and finish it or change it and edit it if you'd like to, or scroll down to the next record that's available and go ahead and work within that record. So as you can see, there's a number of records in here already. And you can also scroll to a record if you're adding a new one or editing one here, you can. Or if, say, I wanted to go to this record, I can hit the portal button. It'll take me to the portal record for that particular item. Okay, so we've covered an awful lot. The next thing we're going to be covering is related to the buyer's list. We're going to create the buyer's list and see what's in there, and then we're going to start in the invoice data. And that'll all be also covered down in here after the buyer's data, the buyer listing, and so forth, and then the invoices and how they function. So let's go to the next video. It's time to look at the buyer items listing.